Okay, so down below you should be able to see like a bunch of like these are some of the ideas that just throw them all in. Like these are beta designs that might be a little bit different compared to the final release of said Pokemon games, depending on whatever one they're from. It can range from Gen 1 all the way up to Gen 5 from what I've been able to find. What's really interesting is this is just like I said before, when a game is created, they go through so many different stages of a game. There's a beta stage, an alpha stage, but basically a final version. Like when we play a game, we really don't know what the game went through before it became what it was. But once again, once people try to find and uncover, secrets that have not been detected before, we can really learn a lot about it. And so once again, this is just some ideas to really show you how some of the Pokemon could have been different, but at the same time, once again, a lot of ideas still made it into the final release like they wanted to. So we at least got to learn that, at least we can put that aside, but still, how many ideas, but on its own, how many ideas still are scrapped that have yet to be discovered? It's really like this. We'd have to find a beta of every single game, dissect it, and then do a side-by-side comparison. While there might be, or even if you're even more capable of getting like, actual like scrapped Pokemon like that were just done on pieces of paper, and you could prove that, that'd be even better too. But hence, like the further back you go, the more rare it may be, unless somebody actually has it. Now, I wouldn't be surprised that Game Freak themselves might have like their own personal archives of them. In some cases, they say some stuff has been lost, or maybe a lot of stuff has been lost. I don't remember exactly which. But I would not be surprised that a lot of these ideas may still be flying around out there somewhere. Because people, believe it or not, people in Japan do preserve their stuff. It's quite very possible that, they might have did the same thing with Pokemon. Paperwork and... Because I'll tell you what, I've been importing stuff for a long time, and I mean, they do take care of their stuff, even stuff that was made years ago. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did the same thing with this, especially if you're someone who's very passionate about the work, which we seem to know the creator of Pokemon is. Say what you will about the newer games. I understand some people don't like some of the things they've gone with, but I mean, with a series as big as this, I mean, it's still a lot of work. But I mean, we're not here to debate like how the game should be. We're here to just really talk about like what they decided to do with the games. We're here to really just talk about like the ideas they scrapped, for now at least. Personally, if you ask me, I think the more we learn about this series, we really can truly find the history of it. And I think at some point everybody will find everything about it that we can, because it's just real interesting to think that somebody might actually have this in their collection, and once they see like how many people are responding to it, they might actually release even more stuff. I know there's going to be more stuff that's going to be coming out, because they've stated before, they being the company themselves, Game Freak, and as well as some of the people that they were digging around, and the people that leaked the Gen 1 stuff. They stated that they're still going to analyze more. There's more to come, and I believe it, because every game's got beta designs and scraps. The only question is, what can you really say and do with it? But it's interesting to think that some of these Pokemon, like, these are just some of the ideas, though. They're, once again, these aren't all of the ideas, but it's interesting to think that even Pokemon like Leafeon from Gen 2 was moved to Gen 4, and some Pokemon in, I think, Tangela, are the Pokemon that Tanga Growth was also in Gen 4. That Pokemon also, believe it or not, was supposed to be in wasn't Gen 1 or 2, and it ended up being in Gen 4, believe it or not. It part of the 190 beta. It's quite interesting to think that, because a lot of the Pokemon were given like an evolutionary, a lot of them were, but they probably didn't make it out until the end of the final cut. They decided just to move all the stuff over, because again, once you draw something and you have it in your reach, you basically can just resume it anytime you want. So maybe they thought they already had enough Pokemon and they decided to make a sequel, and that's what they did. Because I'm sure if you're really passionate about your work and you have all this content to work, you might as well make a sequel, right? I mean, it makes sense. Um, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, this is just, I mean, take for granted, a lot of people, like, they look at some of these games and we judge them sometimes. And I mean, rightfully so, criticism can lead to newer ideas. But I think what a lot of people seem to misunderstand is, like, even Game Freak. I wouldn't say Game Freak's running out of ideas. I mean, they have. I mean, with these ideas, you can really see how many ideas they've changed. And Pokemon being a universal thing, it's there's a lot of work that goes into these games. It's not just you write some, you program it, and then there you go. It's like there's a lot of ideas they probably cannot go through due to time management, and then they have to, like, really kind of stress, like, how can we come up with something before a deadline, like months in advance, or maybe even years. Personally, I think that when a game is released, I mean, it should only be released when it's finished. But I can definitely see why programming is significantly harder than, like, translating something. And I know Japanese, Chinese very fluently, so this can be very critical in this sort of phase. I can understand with all this data, all this work we find. It's remarkable what anybody can even make sense of all this. It's pretty cool, actually. And I feel that with a bunch of newer ideas that come out, we should heavily archive this stuff, because who knows how much longer it'll be around, up to the physical copies of it, at least. But at least if it's on the internet, there's a good chance it'll survive even longer. And then people should preserve that too somehow. So that way it's there as well. So again, like, some Pokemon, like, again, this is just one video, but if I find even more stuff, I'll keep putting it out there. But this is supposed to just kind of show you, like, what Pokemon were, like, some ideas that were scrapped, some more ideas that were scrapped, and really show you what we might have not have known about Pokemon. It kind of reminds me, believe it or not, like, looking at some of these, like when they were doing the storyboarding for the game and all that, like with the drawings and all that. It kind of showed. I always thought it was really interesting to think that, it kind of reminded me of, like, the earlier versions of, like, when they did, like, the storyboarding for, like, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. Chain of Memories looked really different compared to its final release for the Game Boy Advance. If anybody's played that game, I thought it was pretty cool how they made that game. Some people didn't like it. I understand why, and near the end it can be sort of difficult unless you know what to do. But it was interesting to think, like, again, you take a game that you're storyboarding it and you're trying to make a game out of it. But it's like, that's the thing. How do you'd never know what kind of game you're going to make out of this whole thing. Because when you're making a game, it's a lot of stuff changes through. You might have a lot of ideas. You might have a cutoff date. You might have to take some of this stuff and turn it into something else. And that's a whole nother story. You start jumping into different games. Now it's like you're asking the same questions over again. What ideas were scrapped? Which ones made it into the final release? It's crazy to think that. Let alone some of the coding that people find in the files and they're able to make sense of it.